Some of the greatest photographs in history have one thing in common. It's not the camera, it's not the place they were taken, but it's an organization that created one of the most influential photographic cooperatives on the planet. Their name is Magnum Photos. Today, Magnum Photos is considered one of the most respected photography organizations on the planet. But it didn't begin as a business. It began as a rebellion. A rebellion against an industry that treated photographers as replaceable, even after they had risked everything to document history. This is the story of how 4 photographers changed the way we see the world. Photography has always had the power to stop time. A single frame can outlive governments, wars, and even the people that created them. But in the 1940s, the photographers risking their lives to capture history surprisingly had little control over what happened with their images after handing over the film. Magnum Photos didn't begin with success. It began with frustration, and that frustration would change the photography world forever. The Second World War had finally come to an end. Europe was devastated. Entire cities had become mountains of rubble, millions of people displaced, and millions more lost their lives. Across Europe and Asia, photographers documented everything. The liberation of Paris, the beaches of Normandy, families searching through ruined homes, children trying to rebuild lives they barely understood. For the first time in history, millions of people weren't just reading about the world's events, they were seeing them for themselves. Photography had become one of the most powerful forms of journalism the world had ever seen. But there was one problem. The people risking their lives to capture this history and these images really had control over what happened to them next. Contracts frequently gave publishers enormous influence over the way photographs were edited, published, archived, and distributed. The photographer, the person who actually witnessed and captured this history, often had far less control than many people believed they deserved. Imagine documenting a war and surviving on the battlefield for months, only to have someone thousands of kilometers away in an office dictate the future of your work and how it was remembered. To many photographers, this wasn't just frustrating, it felt fundamentally wrong. Photography wasn't simply recording history, it was witnessing it as well, and few people believed that more strongly than a man named Henri Friedman, or as you would know him, Robert Capa. Robert Capa wasn't born Robert Capa, he was born Henri Friedman in Budapest in 1913. As anti-Semitism spread across Europe, he left home and settled in Paris. There, he and fellow photographer Gerda Taro came up with a very unusual idea. At the time, unknown European photographers struggled to sell their work to American magazines and magazines in general. So they decided, let's invent an entirely new American identity. And they did. So overnight, Henri Friedman became Robert Capa, an American-sounding photographer who editors were made to believe was already famous. And funnily enough, the plan worked very well. Now, while the name was invented, the courage wasn't. Capa believed photographers had one responsibility: get close. Really close. He famously said, if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough. During the Spanish Civil War, he photographed some of the conflict's defining moments, including the falling soldier. That's a photograph that is still being debated to this day, but we won't get into that here. It became one of the most influential war photographs ever captured. Then came World War II. Capa followed Allied troops across Europe. On June 6, 1944, he landed on Omaha Beach alongside American soldiers during the D-Day invasion. As bullets tore through the surf around him, Capa kept photographing. According to the long-accepted account, a darkroom accident caused majority of the film that Capa had shot that day to be destroyed. Only 11 usable photographs survived, slightly blurred, grainy, imperfect. Ironically, those imperfections make them feel even more real. They became some of the most iconic photographs of the Second World War. But despite risking his life to capture history, Capa still couldn't fully control how his work was managed after it left his hands. And he wasn't alone. Across Europe, others had come to the same conclusion. They believed photographers deserved more control over the work they created. And in the spring of 1947, that shared belief would lead to one of the most important meetings in photography history. In the spring of 1947, Robert Capa began putting an extraordinary idea into motion. Alongside William and Rita van der Wert, Maria Eisner, Henri Cartier-Bresson, David Chim Seymour, and George Rodger, they set out to build something photography had never seen before. Their idea was surprisingly simple. What if photographers could control their own work? Instead of simply accepting whatever terms publishers offered, photographers could collectively manage, license, and protect their work through a cooperative. They would choose the stories they believed mattered. They would own their archives, and they would support one another across the globe. It wasn't just a new business, it was an entirely new way of thinking about photography. According to Magnum's own traditions, the name came from a Magnum-sized bottle of champagne opened during a celebration. Whether every detail of that story is true is impossible to know, but the name remained. Magnum Photos had been born. It looked like a small cooperative founded by a group of photographers who wanted more control over their work. Almost nobody realized what had just happened. Over the next few decades, Magnum photographers would witness revolutions, civil rights movements, wars, triumphs, and heartbreak across the globe. When Magnum Photos officially began operating, its founders weren't trying to become famous. They were trying to protect something much bigger: the truth. The cooperative gave photographers something that was incredibly rare for at that time: greater control over their work and the freedom to pursue stories they believed mattered. Instead of being told where to go, many Magnum photographers chose their own assignments. Instead of chasing headlines, they chased humanity. That simple change transformed photojournalism. Magnum photographers weren't just documenting events, they were living alongside the people experiencing them, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months, and even sometimes for years. But as Magnum found its footing, one of the founders couldn't stay away from the front lines. Andre Friedman, or Robert Capa, had survived more wars than most people could even imagine. Honestly, it's insane how many wars this man put himself in just to document history. Let me list them for you. The Spanish Civil War, the Second World War, the liberation of Paris, the 1948 Arab-Israel War. And there is one more, but we'll get there. Friends believed he'd finally seen enough. Surely he'd earned a quieter life. But in 1954, Life magazine asked whether he would go cover the First Indochina War. At first, he wasn't interested. He'd grown tired of conflict. But eventually, he caved and accepted the offer. On the morning of May 25th, 1954, Capa was traveling with French soldiers through northern Vietnam. The road ahead looked quiet, almost peaceful. As the soldiers continued walking, Capa stepped off the road to find a better angle, a normal thing he would do anywhere in the world. Seconds later, he stepped on a landmine. He was killed instantly. He was only 40 years old. The man who had spent his entire life getting closer and closer to the action more than anyone else was brave enough to do, had finally gotten too close. His death sent shockwaves through the photography world, but perhaps Capa's greatest legacy wasn't any of his photographs. It was the standard he set: be brave enough to get close, not just to danger, but to people. While Robert Capa believed in getting physically close, Henri Cartier-Bresson believed in waiting, patiently, quietly. He once described photography as placing your head, your eyes, and your heart on the same line of sight. Henri's camera of choice was usually a small Leica, compact enough to disappear into the crowd. Unlike larger press cameras of the time, it allowed him to observe without interrupting the moment. He never asked people to pose. He rarely cropped his images. Everything happened in the instant he clicked the shutter. He called it the decisive moment. A child running through a Paris street, a man leaping across a puddle, a crowd celebrating liberation. Ordinary moments captured at the exact right second. His photographs prove something remarkable. History isn't only created during wars or massive world events. Sometimes history is simply everyday life. And if you wait long enough, extraordinary moments appear. As the decades passed, Magnum photographers seemed to be everywhere. Not because they chased fame, but because history kept finding them. They documented the civil rights movement in the United States, the Hungarian uprising, the Prague Spring, where a photographer named Joseph secretly photographed the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia before his film was smuggled out of the country. Magnum had never believed history belonged only to world leaders. History belonged to everyone. That idea became the heart of the cooperative, not simply documenting events, but documenting the human experience. Today, almost everyone carries a camera in their pockets. Every minute, millions of photographs are uploaded online. Technology has made photography easier than Robert Capa or Henri Cartier-Bresson could have ever imagined. But great photography was never really about the camera. It was about curiosity, patience, and trust. Magnum photographers often spent months building relationships before capturing the images they were searching for, because the best photographs aren't stolen, they're earned. That philosophy still defines Magnum today. Being a Magnum photographer remains one of the highest honors in documentary photography. When Magnum Photos was founded in 1947, nobody knew it would become one of the most influential photographic cooperatives ever created. Its members didn't just capture history, they changed the way history would be remembered. And perhaps that's Magnum's greatest legacy. Not the millions of photographs stored in its archives, but the reminder that every image carries responsibility. Every time we press the shutter, we're deciding what future generations will remember. Because photographs don't just show us what happened, they show us what it felt like to be there. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you learned something, hit that subscribe button and like button, and I will see you in the next video.